Got my start in working in a small biotech company making conjugate vaccines, some of which 20 years later are being used in India, being marketed by a large pharmaceutical company, but transitioned into intellectual property. The title of the talk is Intellectual Gold, Ideas, the World's Most Valuable and Renewable Asset. So to start out with, I want you to think, what is an idea worth? Is it worth hundreds of millions? Maybe a billion? Maybe tens of billions? Or potentially $81 billion? These are some headlines from press clippings and magazine clippings that talk about the amounts that were paid for patents or that were awarded as damages in patent suits. So, why is IP important? We'll first talk about 5 trends. And as I talk about these 5 trends, whether you're working for a company or working for a law firm, I want you to think about what your intellectual property culture is and then what your strategy is. We'll talk about these 5 trends, and then I'll mention some observations that we've made and some answers that we propose to our clients to make sure that they build strong patent portfolios that are extremely valuable to them. So when you think about innovation, you've heard that we have been in different ages, maybe the industrial age, you've heard that we might be in the information age, but if there was a gong here, I'd beat the gong and let you know we're in the age of innovation, and it's worldwide. And you can see from this quote from the CEO of Xerox that innovation is at the core of what many companies do. However, innovation alone is not enough. So I'm glad the doors are closed. I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm not going to make you sign a confidentiality agreement here. But the secret is innovation plus protection equals prosperity. So why is IP important? So there's been a transition, a change in many of the world's most valuable companies. The S&P 500 in the US, if you went back to the 1970s, 80 to 90% of those companies, their assets were tangible assets. If you think of Detroit and the car manufacturing sector or the chemical manufacturing or steel, they were all heavily tangible asset-oriented companies. A very small minority had assets in intangible assets. Now, if we come to today, it's completely swapped. If you look at the S&P 500, Apple, Microsoft, many of these companies, most of what they own is in intangible assets. Apple, I'm not really sure if Apple owns anything other than its intellectual property. And just let me take a step back. When I talk about intellectual property, of course we all understand I'm not just talking about patents. I think just for the ease of discussion, I'll focus on patents. So as I said, it's completely changed. Innovation is the foundation of the world's economy. And we'll talk about how market rewards innovation, and it's the intellectual property that protects this innovation. So when did Wall Street really start paying attention? Just highlight a lawsuit in the US, RIM, Research in Motion versus NTP. This was a patent infringement lawsuit. They tried to settle, and talks broke down on June 10th, 2005. Then they were able to reach an agreement a few months later, almost a year later, March 3rd, 2006. If you look at what their stock did, it was rather flat. It actually took a dip. Okay, now if we move forward to when the settlement actually happened again around March 3rd, RIM's stock was at about $24. It shot up to about $131. So you got 5.5 times return in 20 months. There was some certainty, some surety that was brought to RIM's intellectual property, and Wall Street rewarded that, and we saw a rise in their stock prices. Trend 3, there are a number of companies that their business is to buy and sell patents. Patents have become an asset class, and I really think they need to be taught, intellectual property should be taught not only in law school but in business class. our business people need to know more and more about intellectual property. Rise in IP litigation. Okay, look. Sorry guys, little technical malfunction. So there should be about 4 things that pop up here, but they're not. Okay. Yeah, so maybe I'll go back in, but in order for you to see that, so if I talk about rise in IP litigation, all-time high in 2011. Over the past 5 years, I'll go back, thank you. The annual median award was $4 million. However, the average time to trial is 2.5 years. And we've talked about non-practicing entity or trolls. There's this phenomenon of this increase in the number of trolls playing a portfolio game. Then you've got the courts in Texas, where often this is litigated. And interestingly enough, I found this very curious, but damages were 2 times for the trolls as opposed to practicing entities. Okay. So now, how do I go back to the current slide? To current slide, yes, I have. Go back to the, yeah, to the slideshow. Cool. Yeah, next one. There we go. Okay. So what do the trends tell us? The trends are going to tell us that the traditional approaches for intellectual property are increasingly becoming ineffective. So we've made some observations. The rise in the appreciation of intellectual property is changing the way businesses view and their businesses practice. The portfolio strategy and management is evolving rapidly. So our answer to that is intelligent portfolio, and I'll briefly talk about that. A third observation is, and it's been mentioned in numerous talks at this conference, about evolution of quality and valuation metrics. And our answer is some software called IP Street. So observation 1. I'm going to have to go back. Okay. Again, the rise of IP is changing the way business are practicing. They rethink the role of intellectual property. They're rethinking product development. They're thinking more about mergers and acquisitions, and they're rethinking value creation. Observation 2, we're going more from linear IP creation. If you think about an old chemical company or pharmaceutical company years ago, they hired lots of scientists, and they would develop everything in-house, and they would hope that they'd hit on 1 or 2 of these, and it's changing now. You know, if I had more time, I used to liken this to a professional football club, say Barca or Real Madrid, Man U, Bayern Munich, the way they used to do things in the 70s, player development, and the way they do now, because my 2 passions in life are intellectual property and football. But I don't have the time, so I'll move on. So I want to go ahead and... Perfect. So what is an intelligent portfolio? I mentioned that companies would hire lots of scientists, and they'd do lots of research, and they'd hope that 1 or 2 hits. Well, we're seeing a transition now, and we're advising our clients that every patent that we file should have a purpose. And we can use IP-based analysis to identify market risks and opportunity. So to really exemplify this, I've got, in America, what we call the game Go. These playing pieces can represent patents. And if you look at the x-axis, it represents time, and the y-axis represents different technologies. So we have time going out to 5 or 10 years, and technologies A through D. So if we do a good analysis of what our client or our company